Our speakers today include executives from the leaders in Earth observation from around the globe. Massimo Comparini, CEO of e-geos. François Lombard, SVP and head of the intelligence business at Airbus. Robbie Schingler, co-founder and chief strategy officer of Planet. And sitting alongside Robbie, we have Minnick, who's sitting in for Dan Jablonski.
Thank you, Jeff. It's of course a pleasure, and it's an honor to be here and to be part of the evolution, or more revolution of our industry. And you catch in your few words some of the key elements that is driving our job in those days. I start with just a little story, and I take the opportunity that Rob is a good friend, is in the panel. The first time that, by the way, close by, the 19th Street, I joined Planet headquarters. I said to the guy, Rob was not there, hey, I'm guilty, I'm an old space guy, because in my career I had some responsibility to design those bulky two-tone radars. But this is just to say that I think a lot has been spent about new space. In my mind, there is no old space or new space. There is a transition in what the space technology is, what we can observe from the space about the planet and the Earth, and how to move, as you said, quite quickly from the paradigm to deliver images, to the paradigm to deliver information. In a different way that is useful to address a number of challenges, of course, for institutional purposes. You know, for instance, we have some excellence in managing emergency systems for institutions, to address commercial needs, and to address also the need of new user community. Once for all, the financial community that a few years ago, personally, was difficult to understand how we can serve, and today is a part of our business. So, while you see some short video of what he's doing with Geospatial group and the geoinformation, basically, I think that it's absolutely important, fundamental, and myself, I discovered that how it's important to have some feeling about the space technologies to design in the proper way new services. It's important to understand what will be the evolution of the space sensors, big or small, wherever they are. I'm fully convinced that we will have a complementarity between what the new constellations will offer with, let's say, the big asset, maybe giving the submetric resolution. So that is a kind of basic ingredients from which we can build our recipes. So have the knowledge and have an in-depth discussion between the space manufacturer and our domain, the downstream. Understand, and I was briefly say hello to Jack, and of course his vision, and its wonderful, clear and straight view about how the IT technology is important in our domain. So it's important to understand what we can catch. You mentioned machine learning, deep learning. We know a lot of people talk about even artificial intelligence. Understand how we can have the best use of those techniques and how to build the best partnership. And finally, go straight to what we can do vertical by vertical. The information that we need to give to the farmer for agriculture is different from the information that we need to go to the financial community, that we need to go to manage risk, to manage the monitoring of the critical infrastructure. So it's a really broad range of expertise, which is a challenge, which is, to me, it's really fascinating. And I think that's the other key element that I keep in my mind, really need and embrace the integration of many different things in terms of business model, in terms of partnership, in terms of technology.
Standing. Thank you, Massimo. It is indeed interesting. François.
I'm representing here the Airbus Group for the Geospatial services. It's a very interesting place to be, both at Airbus and in the industry at that time, I would say. As mentioned by Jack this morning, is investing 1/3 of his revenues in the business, and I think it's a very good example of what this industry is doing. We're investing a lot, we're taking a lot of risks, and that's a good thing. Just for Airbus, investing twice my revenues over the last 2 years, so it's a pretty difficult time in terms of challenges and pressure, I would say. But at the same time also, I'm pretty sure we take the right bet, and so we will see for the next 10 years what we bring to the market and how the market reacts to that. Why is it such an amazing time in terms of investment? First of all, because we renew our constellation of satellites, which remains a quite expensive business, even if some are challenging us in terms of cost of satellites and new space approach. But if you want to go really high-end, if you want to bring very differentiating elements to the market for the next 10 years, you need to take some big bets in terms of CapEx. Second aspect is we are not only investing into satellites, we think even more and more into drones, and especially high-altitude drones. That's also a big step. And it's capital intensive. So that's kind of the field where we are currently at least putting most of our bets and our efforts. But in parallel to that, it's not enough to produce data anymore. And it was well said this morning, you need to put this data as part of a system which touches the users, a system which is part of a larger software environment, a system which is cloud-based. And these are also elements where we need to make efforts. We have started the journey a few years ago, and I think we are now starting really to get what people would call democratized access to the data. I know DG is doing that a lot, Planet as well. That's really part of the new job. You need to make this data available everywhere, very quickly, very fast, and with the right level of reliability and accuracy. And there's a lot of things which are happening in this field, especially and also at Airbus Group. The last element which is new for me as well is indeed the number of partnerships. It was shown this morning that it's going down, the feeling it's going up. Or at least on our field, there are really new partnerships opening up. We signed last year 2 major partnerships, I would say. One with Orbital Insight, which shows us in the room, but on the analytics part. The idea was really to combine this analytics strengths with the data and to train new algorithms on our data. So it's an important step for us. We have also partnerships announced with Planet. And I think it's very exciting to see how we can combine the different types of data in an integrated way and bring new solutions. So these are the kind of fields where we are pushing these days. I wanted to show you a few images, which I think are pretty exciting. So this one, it's kind of 30 centimeter resolution satellite data. Somehow it does already exist on the market. What is new is that the volume of data will explode over the next years. So we are launching our new satellites in 2020. For us, it means an increase of 4 to 5 times in terms of volume of data, and I know we won't be alone. So we have to prepare all together for this massive increase of data availability. We are launching these kind of birds, which are flying at 70,000 feet above the air traffic, and which are bringing new payloads to the market and new type of imagery. The capabilities are typically bringing the field for one drone, the capability to look at a full city in persistent lows. And that's pretty amazing. At the resolutions which will go below 20 centimeters. I will show you the first images we flew during last summer in August in the US, actually in Yuma. I was amazed to see what it's so going well. But anyway, we got 28 centimeter resolution pictures, and more interesting, when you start to look at it, obviously, I hope it moves, you get video from that, because it's in persistent mode. You get video from that, the picture is probably, or the image is probably a bit small for you, but obviously you see the cars moving. I hope if the zoom is good enough, you will also see some people moving. So it's basically changing the kind of imagery we get 24/7 because it's flying over our heads. It's not disturbing the air traffic, and good to know as well, it's fully automatic. So we flew 1 month during last summer. It's basically capable to fly 6 to 9 months without interruption. It was a world record last August. I'm really excited to see how we use that as part of a larger system. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
I have to ask, Zephyr is very impressive. How do you think about the pros and cons of this approach compared to high altitude balloons?
Well, it's one aspect. I think it's first of all, it's flying already. The balloon will come. They are not yet there at this level that you can fly them in a static way over a specific area, and this over several months. So I think we have a bit of advance on that. It's more flexible. You can get it down and you can move it to different areas. Let's imagine, I don't know, you're watching San Francisco and you can decide, okay, now it's enough, we go to Los Angeles. So it's also an aspect which is interesting. The drawback is probably the size of the weight of the payload you can carry. So you saw on this kind of 22-meter board, you can carry something around 5 kilos, so it has a limitation. Right?
Thank you, François. Robbie?
I'm really looking forward to this. I think that we have a lot of things that are going on in our industry, not just from the satellite side, but then also from the data exploitation side. And in my opinion, that is where we need to focus as a community. There is an explosion of remote sensing data, either from drones and also from satellites, and also lots of publicly available data that really needs to be interoperable so that we can then query across them and change day-to-day workflows. I think that we as an industry have a hidden secret that we see these trends converging and taking the insight of geospatial intelligence to all of society. And that's, we need that as a civilization to make data-driven decisions. And we also can take advantage of that commercially, recognizing that this will help people to better allocate their scarce resources, whether it's their time or deploying their planes or their fixed assets or making a trade. And we're at the very beginnings of this, and will take some time. And with that, we also need to do it with patience. So at Planet, we have a constellation of over 100 small satellites that image the whole world every day. This was with a bit of foresight looking at the commoditization of storage and compute to just suspend disbelief around the data processing costs. And over the last few years, what we have seen is an open sourcing of AI and analytics, which is absolutely vital for us as an industry to leverage the investments that are going on into that, to then make more sense of the large amounts of data that are coming down, and to change workflow within the market. Also at Planet, we have 15 high-resolution satellites. These are SkySats. We just launched another 2 more in December. And this allows for us to image anywhere on the planet multiple times a day across the fleet of satellites. And what we see as the big market opportunity here is to transform our business into a subscription economy, where you capture the imagery and then you keep the imagery forever, but then you license access to it to different facets of society at a price that they can afford, that has value for them. And then, if we think about what AI has done over the last 5 years, think about what AI will do over the next 5 years. And so we also need to recognize that powering these algorithms are really real-time information feeds, which is part of our role within the ecosystem. So I see that it's going to, all the leading indicators of the transformation of our market and our business are there. I think that it is going to take patience and time and partnership in order for it to really bring the geospatial advantage to all of the enterprise. But I couldn't agree more with what Jack was saying with respect to to really transforming all of our business models more into subscriptions and to do it as an ecosystem and as a partnership. If we are continuously just focused on a relatively small market opportunity, then we're missing the big picture. And that each one of us have differentiating assets in space that when brought together and also with other real-time information that's coming from the ground will allow for the greatest impact of our industry to happen through society.
Robbie, that's a fascinating observation. The shift from data to analytics seems to be really taking hold of the planet. Are you ingesting data from other sources beyond your large constellation, or is it still primarily focused or exclusively focused on your own data?
We do ingest Landsat and Sentinel data through our platform.
Yes. Well, thank you, Robbie. Yep. Amy.
So we have countries that are battling the fact that their coastlines are changing, that their populations are moving to cities, and they need geospatial insights to be able to handle those problems. We also have technology change that's absolutely exploding with autonomous vehicles that want information about where they are in the world that are coming right to the car. We also have telecom companies that are trying to build out 5G networks to handle the explosion of technology, the explosion of bandwidth required to support all the devices you're all looking at right now. And what that means is we have to go faster as an industry. Our customers, our citizens, everyone is asking us to be able to go faster. And that's the challenge that collectively we have. It's also the opportunity that collectively we have. So at Maxar, we're focused on bringing together capabilities across the portfolio. And what does that mean for us? We're starting to fuse RadarSat capabilities together with EO. That allows us to see subsidence monitoring for buildings in locations all around the world. So as you start to see changes in climate, you also see buildings sinking, you also see buildings rising, and we're starting to be able to measure that. We're also looking at maritime monitoring as bringing those capabilities together. The second thing is to bring together the analytic capabilities that we have in the Radiant business unit together with the EO data that we have from DigitalGlobe. So we've been flying satellites and have collected an archive of more than 100 petabytes of data. It's a 20-year look into the history of the planet. And using analytics, you can pull out change detection, you can pull out land use, land cover capabilities, and you can also see what's changing around the planet. And then last but not least, we are a big believer in partnerships. So we've been a partner with Orbital for quite some time, very proud of their capabilities to bring data from satellites to handle real-world applications in the financial services industry and in many other industries. We also have partnered with Vricon to create the strongest 3D product solution any place on the globe. We've also partnered recently with Acopia to be able to do 2D building footprints, and we can do those at scale and at volume. And we've brought that capability to see 2D building footprints for every building in Tanzania. And we've done that in conjunction with the Gates Foundation to be able to bring vaccines to the right locations. So what I see is the need, an exploding need for technology, an exploding need for the insights that we can bring. What we've also experienced quite recently is that space continues to be hard. So last week, you may have seen the announcement that we had a component failure on WorldView 4, one of our 5 satellites, and that has intensified the desire at DG and the desire at Maxar to absolutely continue to provide continuous service for our customers, to continue to provide the best mosaics, the best imagery in the world, and we will do exactly that. We are also doubling down our efforts to focus on Legion, so we've announced our next generation constellation and are absolutely focused on bringing those capabilities to market as quickly as we can bring them. So we remain focused on our customers, we remain focused on our partners, we remain focused on our on our colleagues, and also on partnering with all of you. So as I step back, I am encouraged by the industry that we're all in. And I also wanted to thank many of you for the calls that you made to DigitalGlobe and for reaching out after Worldview 4. You're never more encouraged than by hearing from your customers, by hearing from your partners, and I thank you for that. And I look forward to the questions that you have, and I'm also very pleased to be on the panel.
Thank you, Amy. It looks like you and your team are stepping up to the challenges, and you're not going to let the news from last week set you back. So congratulations on that. So a question for the panelists. What are the 2 or 3 most important trends that you see driving innovation in the industry? And I'm going to make this hard, a little harder, because you've all mentioned machine learning. So rather than have all 4 of you say machine learning, I think we can accept that that's going to make the top 3. 1 or 2 others.
I think that the EO data and non-EO data fusion, it would be really important. We had this morning some highlights about location analytics. I think that the revisit time, François shows what a machine like Zephyr may give. That kind of information flow combined with the non-EO data, I think that would be really remarkable to drive the information to the users, first. Second, of course, we had quite a view about what is the panorama of the evolution of the optical data. The data analytics company, the success of the data analytics company, which is starting to actually deliver weekly based information report to their users, open also another trend. Because at the end, if you are successful to derive on weekly basis and tomorrow on a daily basis information to the key decision guy, and they base their key decision on also this report, they don't care about clouds. So it open, and of course as a leading operator of radar conservation, this is very important because open a trend. Optical data will remain the big part of the overall data market, but we know as well that radar is growing up. And I think this is in the information flow paradigm that we describe. It's relevant, and of course it's very relevant for us. Next year will be very important for us because we go to space with the first satellite of the Cosmos second generation. The second one will follow up in 2020, means that we're ready to provide through the radar layer up to 2030 the right piece to derive the information. So non-EO data and non-EO data. You mentioned, of course, ML, machine learning, all the kind of algorithms. I think it's also relevant a layer that I don't know for which reason sometimes we underestimate, which is what we can do with the ground infrastructure. Because at the end, if we will have the evolution of space sensors, constellations, and the different assets in space, and then if at the final user, our idea is to channelize them huge information flow, we need also a very effective ground infrastructure taking benefit of cloud technologies, taking benefit of a global receiving network in order to give to our information machine data as fresh as possible. I think this is an interesting trend as well.
Thank you, Massimo. François.
We get more and more difficult.
Yes. You're gonna. Hopefully there'll be some left by the time we get to you, Amy, or we'll move on to the next question.
I try at least take a bit of a different perspective. I think the industry has done a lot to again democratize the use of geospatial data, but there's still a full world we are not touching, or at least where we are not rightly touching. And I think of all these small developers, potentially small startups, universities, which need and have ideas about geospatial services, but it's a lot of efforts to get there. I got the statistic for a new team of few people to develop a geospatial service. Today they need about 6 months because they need to buy the data, to put the infrastructure in place, even if it's on the cloud. You still need to put a bit of work to touch the customer and so on, and to get the product ready. I think we could get to 2 weeks. if we do it right, if we work together, if we put the right infrastructure in place, if we give the right access to the data, and let's be careful, it's sensitive data, so you still have to put some constraint on it, but we could get from 6 months to 2 weeks. If we get to 2 weeks, can you imagine the number of applications that we will get on this market? I think at least that's something I'd like to see as a trend for the years to come. The second aspect...
Sounds like you're pointed in the same direction as Jack and his team at Esri.
Sure, but I'm sure he will need data as well. And so it's a combination of all of this that should make the workflow more simple. The second aspect, jump on it, but you said you need more than EO data. It's very true. The Earth observation data is getting only one part of the value. And more you can even replace it with other kind of data, whether from the IoT or more and more we are working with open source information, so human information. And it's really the mix of all that make it clever, that make it useful. It's very challenging because you have structured and unstructured information you have to mix in a very quick way and in a very simple way in terms of decision making. So there's a lot of technology challenge. And it brings us to another challenge, I think, and that's a big trend for us in the next years, is how do you make sure you are using the right data, or there's no fake news in the middle of it. The more fake news you get, or even one fake news as part of 1 million of good data, it will kill your analysis. How do you make sure it's right? How do you make sure there's no cyber attacks that makes it wrong in the middle of the process? I think these are kind of questions which are a bit frightening, because with all these investments we make, somebody could make it wrong very quickly. So that would be the kind of trends I would see as a major focus for us.
Thank you, François. Robbie?
Under the workflow modernization and the kind of interoperability of data, I think is going to be a major trend, where we use OGC, we use our open standards and our approaches to really abstract away the hardcore sensor level expertise that you have to do in order to use geospatial data. So I think that's a meta trend that we as satellite operators need to work on to help to define these new protocols that are coming up, like STACK and other things, in order to make it really interoperable. That will then unlock way more of the value of doing analytics on top of it. So that's one trend, is interoperability of data and the standards that help to facilitate with that within our own workflow modernization. The next that I mentioned in my talk is I think that we're going to see a proliferation and experimentation in new business models with subscriptions that are industry specific or like unlocked before an event, or like when the event happens. You can imagine if you're a disaster response organization, you can subscribe to the hurricane season now. And so that when it happens, you get pushed the data that you need in order for you to do your job. So I think that we're going to see unique products and new industries as a trend. And the last one, while it's not really geospatial, it's derived from it, which is new overhead architectures. We have a lot more satellites that are going up into space. We are riding that wave as an industry. We get to commercialize on top of that, but the overall meta theme is one of disaggregation and diversification of sensors up in space.
Well, that's exciting. Amy?
A few trends that we're excited about. One is the decrease in costs in cloud computing. So as many people have mentioned, the imagery is heavy. It's lots of data. It is quite expensive to do the compute on all of that data. So as the cost of cloud computing goes down, then what you're able to do is derive those insights from the imagery much more quickly and at scale. And so the faster that we can ride that trend, the more we can bring end solutions and insights out to our customers. The second, I agree with the subscription trend. I think the subscription trend is, and information subscriptions have been in lots of other industries for quite some time. We're just starting to see this apply to our industry, where customers can subscribe to a product and to a service on an annual basis, on a multi-year basis, and instead of buying the imagery itself, they're buying the answers that they're most interested in. So while it's not a technology trend, it is our industry adopting a trend that's been in lots of other industries. The third is all sorts of new industries adopting and looking at information and geospatial insights. So we announced earlier this year a partnership with Vodafone to be able to bring geospatial information out to the field. It's something called Sensing for Farming, and it commingles different data sets and allows agricultural regions and farmers to be able to see the health of their crop. Now, they're never purchasing imagery, but they're getting the derivative combination of that data plus the sensors pulling from the ground and seeing how healthy the crops are. And so that's a use case you may never have thought of before, but the ability to bring that data, commingle data with multiple data sources, and bringing the cost of that data down allows us to open up brand new use cases. So those are some of the trends that we're excited about and that we are investing in DG.
Okay, in a moment, I'm going to give each of you a chance to answer quickly the question, what commercial segment are you investing most heavily in? So I'm going to force you to choose one and then illustrate it with one quick use case. So Amy, do you see as the number one commercial segment that you're investing in this year, and what's the use case you're most excited about?
So the use case we're most excited about is automotive. As more and more information goes to your automobile, and the cars literally have the location-based intelligence themselves, we are incredibly excited about bringing the ability to take that location-based information at scale to the global automotive players. One example is a partnership we announced with General Motors a couple of quarters ago, and that is the first pilot using geospatial information for autonomous vehicles. Now, it's not letting the car go so far as to drive itself, but it is an additional set of data which, when combined with the sensor information in the car, is a very powerful way for the automobile to have a reference set of data. So excited to see what happens in that sector over the next several years.
Who's next? Robbie, you ready, or someone else want to jump in?
No, happy to. So about 2.5 years ago, we acquired Blackbridge and the Rapid Eye satellites, and last August they celebrated 10 years after a 6-7 year design life cycle. And so what we've been focused on is still agriculture. That sensor was purposefully designed for agriculture by including in a fifth spectral band called Red Edge, and a lot of our customers really are reliant on that in their day-to-day workflow. And so what we're investing in is that interoperability of our data suite products so that the customer does not see any shift as we move off of Rapid Eye and we move on to the next generation Dove satellites. Just last month, we launched 6 tech demos of our latest satellite, and that includes the Red Edge band, but it also includes 7 more bands. So it's a 14-band EO and near infrared capability in the small 3U form factor. And so that's going to be a major focus for us, is to go through North America growing season and be ready for Southern Hemisphere growing season, hopefully with this new 14-band product.
Thanks, Robbie. I'm glad you shared that. Industry observers like me have been wondering what comes after Blackbridge, after that 10-year anniversary. So that's important news. François.
Well, it's pretty difficult actually in our position to define one commercial segment or industry.
That's what I'm asking.
I know. But because where we invest most is actually into our sensors. We invest, we have currently about 1 billion of investments into the sensors. That's why I decided also to show you some images and some data, because it's kind of the basics. And that's where, I think, again, Jack said, you need to focus on some areas. There's so many opportunities. You need to focus on where you're really better, you're really differentiating, you are really bringing value. And that's where we really put the highest focus today. Now, if I would have to pick one industry which I think is ramping up and will continue to ramp up, it's what we call location-based services. And again, using a Zephyr for location-based services over a city, I'm pretty sure would bring a lot of value.
Thank you.
You know, having said that, I have secured the Cosmos came at second generation up to 2030. I'm lucky in this respect because the investment for the sensor is there, for sure. In terms of data availability, we shape also what we name optical capacity building. So we traditionally were a radar sensor company, but the optical capacity building will allow us to complete the picture and to have all the ingredients in-house to derive the information. But then if I need to pick up for my downstream part is go to cloud. Go to cloud with all application platforms that I shape the strategy when I jump in. I mean, we have a number of thematic platforms to serve basically the two big markets, the institutional market, DNI, defense and intelligence, MDA, maritime domain awareness, and image intelligence in general. It's very important, and we know that will remain very important, and then the commercial one. So how to access, and we mentioned that, how to make accessible with an iPad on the field from the farmers, what we can give from the EO and non-EO data, how we can support the disaster recovery phase and also the financial assessment after a disaster, like a flood, like an earthquake, like a fires, and finally how to really penetrate the financial and economical community to use our services. We need cloud and we need to be, let's say, subscription fee, whatever it is, but we need to be available in every place.
So that foundational investment in cloud is really where you're starting. Is anyone else at the fund room investing in drones or high altitude balloons or any other unconventional platforms?
I think HIP it's an interesting sensor.
Are you investing in that?
Yes, I mean at the level of Space Alliance there is a project which is named Stratobus, and we are looking to that because it's an interesting complement in data layer. And persistent surveillance, of course, is important for that, but also think agriculture and monitoring of large area with the temporal resolution that an HIP can give you.
Super.
And second, just to complement on the hyperspectral, we will have the launch in July of a Italian national mission which is named Prisma. It's very important because it will allow us to make a step further in the integration of what we today we deliver, integrating sensor from drones and satellites with a precursor of constellation of hyperspectral sensors. I agree with Robbie. I think it's opening really a new way for a certain domains.
Anything you want to add, Amy, on hyperspectral or high altitude balloons or drones?
We believe in commingling those data sets as well, and that and many of our partners do too. So you can commingle the drone capabilities with the satellite imagery and be able to serve multiple different use cases. On the hyperspectral side, we've been in that business for quite some time and are seeing a reemergence from the energy customers in particular who want to be able to see who are interested in being able to detect climate change variables from space and measure the emissions from different energy facilities. And so that is a new and emerging use case where where we expect to see long-term demand for hyperspectral kinds of imagery, and are starting many of those discussions as well. And as you continue to need to measure, and the energy companies need to measure, and countries need to measure what is happening with emissions and controlling those emissions, we think that those use cases will continue to grow.
Great. Flash forward 5 years. Any other bold predictions looking a little further out, 5 years out?
I think we have a big risk over the next years to be, as an Earth observation data provider, to be replaced by providers of IoT data, SIGINT data, or whatever source of data. And I would see in 5 years a big change there with maybe on this panel actually some players which are coming from with very different source of data and which are actually really disrupting us. Maybe the drones again are the ones which will change the picture, but obviously the pure satellite play is coming to an end.
Very different business models, and I think a different overhead architecture than we have today.
I think you'll see the majority of the Global 2000 using location-based information to make decisions. And so today, where it's a small fraction, I think it will become part of the way that companies make their capital decisions and make their resource decisions. And it's up to us to figure out how can we serve that need and can we do it fast enough.
Much more AI-based applications and much more access through mobile and through, let's say, massive available devices of our services.
Terrific. We heard today about many new technologies. We heard about new challenges. We heard about new market opportunities. And we heard about a quest for partnerships. And I am confident that in this room, there are numerous partnership opportunities that have yet to be tapped with our panelists here at the front of the room, because together, working together, we really do have a collective opportunity to advance the SDGs and to make the world that we all live in a better place. Thank you very much.
Thank you.